Welcome to Avaya, Dr. Ameet.
Thank you, Brielle. Really excited to really peel the different layers of trauma that we receive from narcissistic parents and what we can do in terms of healing sentences and homeopathic remedies to really discharge these entanglements that we form under the abuse of narcissistic parents. So yeah, happy to jump right into it.
Awesome. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say on this topic. So then I wanted to get right in and ask you, what is family constellations therapy and how does it help with childhood trauma and or narcissistic parents?
So, family constellations therapy is a form of therapy similar to other psychotherapies where we use healing sentences. So, the client uses healing sentences to disentangle from subconscious traumas. Why do I call them subconscious? Because we often think of traumas as obvious events in our life, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, abandonment, financial stress, etc. And Bert Hellinger, the creator of family constellations therapy, noticed that there's subtle traumas that are going on in our lives all the time that we actually absorb or inherit from our parents, from our ancestors, even, and that we're not aware of them as traumas. Yeah. Basically, we are loyal. We are, in a way, loyal out of love. Yeah. And the need to belong to the family. We're loyal to imbalances that are happening in the family. What does that all mean? If one of the parents have been abused, right, by the other parent, we are often loyal to the weaker parent and we often reject the stronger parent or the abuser. So, yes, the conflict will seem like a trauma to you, but your own loyalty, entanglement, as well as rejection of one parent is a subtle trauma that is often not named. And this causes a deep disturbance in our psyche, yeah, a very deep disturbance, this loyalty, and a disturbance in our also in our heart, in our emotions, and eventually in our physiology. So I've seen a woman develop cancer from rejecting her father and trying to side with her mother. It was due to an affair. I'm not saying everyone develops cancer from this, but after using healing sentences such as dear dad, you know, it's costing me my life to reject you, or dear mom, please forgive me if I look at dad equally as you, if I look at dad as a parent as well, and I respect your journey in this relationship with dad. I'm the child, you're the big ones. Please take over responsibility for what happened, both of you. Those kind of healing sentences, number one, they free the soul, your psyche, from the entanglement that is going on between your parents. Okay. And believe it or not, the cancer resolved. We combined homeopathy and diet changes, but the main healing work was with the family constellations work for this cancer patient. So, family constellations therapy looks at disturbances in the family system. One is one disturbance that often happens is we ignore people who need to belong. Yeah, so everyone has a right to belong. What does that mean? Often there's miscarriages or abortions that are not talked about. Yeah, we ignore them and we think we're the first child or the second child. And when these entanglements or these babies are ignored and we're assuming the wrong position, I've seen clients often will have anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, deep sense of guilt because they're taking the place that is not theirs. They're living the first position child, but really they're the second child. Or they have a deep guilt of surviving when the first child could not survive. Yeah, and they're stuck in a depression that cannot be fixed with normal treatments. That's one entanglement. And also when we ignore, let's say, a a forgotten uncle who was an alcoholic or abusive, etc., and we're not talking about him, that ignored person still, their energy still lives in the family system. And so somebody born in the family system will often take on the energy of that ignored person and exhibit behaviors similar to that ignored uncle. It could be alcoholism, or it could be the sense of feeling ignored and unloved. Yeah. We end up representing the trauma that has happened to that ancestor. Same goes for the need to include ex-lovers of our parents. They're often ignored or hidden. And when these secrets are revealed and we say, okay, dear ex-lover, I see you. I see my dad loved you. Dear dad, I respect the love you had for this other woman as well. You kind of include everything about your father in your heart then, not only parts of your father. And then you as a child then feel more complete in your heart. And then anxiety, depression, and chronic disease start resolving. Okay. Then the other order of love, the other rule in family constellations is the order of hierarchy. So the people who came before us have a priority in the system. So ex-lovers need to be acknowledged where they are. Previous siblings, whether they're miscarried, aborted, or just given away, they need to be given their place as well. Yeah. Before they came before us, so we end up being in this, we need to acknowledge our own true position, whether it's second, third, fourth, or fifth child. I'm just summarizing because I really want to get into how we can deal with narcissistic parents using constellation therapy and how we can use homeopathy as well. The third order of love is the order of balance and giving and taking, sorry. And so when one parent gives to another parent, or one partner gives to another partner and overgives and the other partner doesn't give or receives too much and is not allowed to give back, often we see resentment and affairs and conflict developing, even though there's acts of love going on, it's not balanced. And in the same way, when parents give birth to children, in a way, our duty as children is to give life onwards to another child or to do good in society or charitable work or something to pass on the gift of life, yeah, that our parents have given us. This is the balance of giving and taking, yeah? So when it comes to narcissistic abuse, what happens is we often take on the pain, the sorrow, the grief of our parents, yeah? In these kind of relationships or these dynamics, the parent is often blaming the child or, trying to get their needs met from the child. So the child feels this loyalty. Dear mom, I have to serve you, even though you're depressed and abusive. I need to still remain belonging in this family system. Yeah. So the desire to belong in any child is huge, even if there's abuse in the family. Yeah. And so normal therapies work on releasing the trauma, etc., but usually they don't address the loyalty and the entanglement and the need to belong in the system. And that's the beauty of family constellations therapy. Yeah. I describe a lot more healing sentences in my online course, which people will find out at the end of this talk. But some of the healing sentences we can use would be, Dear mom, at all costs, I will serve this pain of yours. And then, so you're naming what you're doing already. At all costs, I will take on your grief or allow this to happen, even if it's costing me my happiness, my safety. And then when you say these sentences, you get an awareness of what it's costing you to remain entangled in this abusive relationship. And that awareness is the beginning of your freedom. Yeah, it's the beginning of your healing, actually. Once you have that awareness, then it's okay then to say deeper healing sentences, such as, I now realize that I am safe and I still belong in a family, even if I leave this with you, dear mom or dear dad. I still have a place in this system. Even if I stop carrying your pain with your father or your mother. So often, narcissistic parents are narcissistic because they have their own traumas and it's coming from their own parents or grandparents. And in constellation work, we figure out, actually, we can discover very easily where the narcissism is coming from. Yeah. So, and if it's an entanglement with the grandfather, the grandmother, etc. And based on what we find out, then we can say the right healing sentences to address the narcissism as well as where the narcissism comes from. Yeah. So it could be, Dear mom, a better way to belong is to respect that you're carrying something for your father, and I'm not the one to take this on. I really love you and respect you and give you a place in my heart. Please forgive me. Please bless me if if this if I leave this with you and granddad, for example. Yeah. Or there's an affair between, the father has had an affair. and mom's really upset, and she's taking out that upsetness on you as the child, trying to get her needs met. You can say, "Dear mom, this is dad's doing, not mine. You know, please forgive me if I look at dad as equally as I do you. Please forgive me if I let you two handle this by yourselves, or if I ask you to please look at this lover with forgiveness." I mean, there's different healing sentences we can use depending on the unique situation of a person. And that comes more easily when the person is in front of me, because then I channel the information. And we do this a lot in the retreats that I run in Africa and in Europe. There's some coming to North America actually, where we'll have representatives helping out, working with together. So in the retreat, everyone gets to participate. And so let's say you're the client, then, and we need somebody to represent your mother or your father. We'll use retreat participants to represent your mother and father. And as representatives, they give me more information about the emotional entanglements of your mother, your father, or whoever we're representing, your grandparents, etc. And with that more information, we can get clear healing sentences as well. Very powerful technique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. I've never heard about those healing sentences before. Is that something that we're saying internally or externally or either or?
We're usually saying them externally, vocally, out loud,
Okay.
and we're imagining talking to the person. So the mother, father, the relative doesn't have to be there physically in the room. We're imagining them there and we're imagining speaking to them. And when you say these healing sentences, there's a lot of discharge, a lot of change in your own physiology. You'll feel it. When you have the right healing sentence, your body will start changing. You'll feel a relief, you'll feel a clarity, you'll feel like as if you're awakening all over again and getting, a real, it's called an awakening, really, yeah? A realization that you're really not responsible for the pain of your parents. You're not. They
Mm,
have their journey, and we find safer ways of respecting their journey, because we all have loyalties to our parents. We never want to betray them or, leave all the burdens with them. We think that's wrong. And in a way, our body will not let us do that, because in a way, the way we serve our parents keeps us belonging to the family. So in constellation work, we create safety so that healing sentences are able to be spoken and have a positive effect rather than creating resistance in the client.
Okay, yeah. So then if we didn't have someone like you there to channel what might be there for us, are people able to find those healing sentences for themselves, or is it going to be difficult to really get real clarity on what that is?
So my online course covers a lot of healing sentences that people can practice. And when you practice them long enough, you get familiar with the energy of healing sentences, then they start coming to you much easier. Yeah, I've seen that time and time again for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's always good to have a facilitator working with you, because we as facilitators, I as a facilitator, am more objective. Yeah, I see things from the outside. But if we're trying to work on ourselves, we're engrossed almost in the problem itself rather than looking at the entanglement that's more systemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, systemic meaning that it belongs to the family system, grandparents, or people who murdered a grandparent, or somebody who the grandparents murdered, or a lover, or a missing child. We might not be aware of those things. And facilitators usually will pick up those missing pieces. And then it's easier for us to create sentences because we pick up the missing pieces and we create sentences based on these missing pieces as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see how if you're just focused on yourself, you have a lot of blind spots to what could really be there in terms of the whole family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in your work, I know you also talk about homeopathic remedies for anxiety, depression, and trauma. Could you share a little bit more about this and why it's so important for mental health?
Yeah, so a lot of people going through abuse and trauma end up suffering from anxiety, depression, OCD, even stress and burnout. Okay. And so in my online course, I cover a lot of homeopathic remedies as well that help release trauma, yeah, as well as deal with specific emotions of anxiety and depression. Yeah, let's go through them bit by bit. So, depending on the type of trauma, there's a specific homeopathic remedy. So, if there's an accident, if somebody's witnessed an accident, for example, there's about 5 or 10 different remedies. If somebody has witnessed their parents fighting and arguing a lot, then there's another set of remedies for that, maybe even up to 20 remedies. Why am I saying that there's multiple remedies? Because whenever somebody, each person who experiences the same kind of trauma, each person responds differently. So if I experience my parents fighting, then I will respond maybe in a withdrawn way or a sense of like fear and anxiety, versus somebody else who experiences their parents fighting, for example, might express more anger in their lives and frustration and be more volatile because they're not feeling safe and they do just like protect themselves, right? So in homeopathy, we look at the type of trauma as well as the response that the person is having, the behavior of a person, and select the remedy that encompasses both aspects. Yeah, all the characters of a person as well as the uniqueness of the trauma. And that's why homeopathy works so well, because it's an energetic form of medicine. Meaning, yes, you take it in pill form, but it works at a vibrational level. And when people are going through traumas during childhood or emotions in their life, etc., these are vibrational in nature. Yes, there's biochemical reactions going on in our body, but there's vibration also happening, yeah, at an energetic level. And so when you use vibrational remedies such as homeopathy, you have a better ability to peel away, yeah, the trauma and the negative influences of the trauma on the mind and the body. And that's why homeopathy works so much faster and better, in my opinion, than just using psychotherapy alone. Because you're kind of encompassing the entire energetic sphere, yeah, and the frequency of a person with that one pill. You're encompassing the experience of the trauma, the response to the trauma, and the type of trauma. So really, you're encompassing a whole bigger picture than common psychotherapy or, just everyday psychotherapy where you're working on one event at a time or one emotion at a time, one experience at a time. So some of the remedies I cover in my course, for example, um, since we're talking about narcissistic abuse, etc., and maybe issues and conflicts with our parents, graphites is a very common remedy I use. Graphites is a remedy often given to children or people like you and I as well, who grew up with parents fighting a lot. Carcinosin as well is another remedy that's often used where the parents are overbearing and over controlling and over dominant. Natrum muriaticum I often use where, the person feels very withdrawn and sad and resentful. Maybe they lost a loved one, a parent, or they were scolded a lot and they couldn't stand up for themselves. Yeah, and they started mistrusting the world around them. Ignatia Amara is a great one for shock and trauma as well. And maybe you've been scolded or you've been betrayed or you're experiencing your mom's betrayal, whatever it may be, and you're left feeling anxious, tearful, vulnerable. You don't feel a sense of grounding. Ignatia is a beautiful remedy for that. Yeah, so based on the unique symptoms you have, I would choose, or the course helps to describe, a, a more unique remedy for your specific situation.
Lovely.
And then, of
Very,
course, yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry. And then, of course, there's remedies for specific kinds of emotions as well. So with anxiety, people have multiple different kinds of anxiety, right? Some have a fear of robbers, fear of getting hurt, fear of their health, fear of illness, fear of death, or a sense of unease, or they have more of a social anxiety, or they feel more anxious when they're alone. Yeah, so depending on your unique experience of anxiety, yeah, there's remedies that I cover in the course. And the same with depression. Some people feel they want to be alone, or some people feel better when they're in the company of others. Some depressed people are more suicidal. Yeah, they have suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideations. And other people want to cuddle, they want to be held. Yeah, and there's a mixture of all these symptoms in different people. And based on your unique collection of symptoms, there could be a unique remedy for you as well.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing about that. Very interesting. So, when we're partaking in this homeopathy, are would we have a facilitator with us, or is it a process alone? Could you like explain a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So I often encourage people to see a homeopathic doctor, of course, like myself or my colleagues, to help find the right remedy. Because again, objectivity is important. Yeah, me as a practitioner, I as a practitioner witness you and witness your behavior, and I'm more experienced with the remedies. The online course covers a myriad of remedies that give you a very deep insight of possible remedies that could be useful for you. So that would be a great start as well. And you can always mention to your holistic doctor, what about this remedy or this remedy? You become familiar with them. And a lot of people experiment, and I'm not encouraging this, but they do experiment with different homeopathic remedies. Yeah. And some people find relief, and some people don't find any relief because they've got the wrong remedy. But becoming familiar with each remedy is super important because then you get to the right remedy faster, even if you're working with another practitioner.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. That makes a lot more sense now. I know
Mhm.
in your work you also cover healing the gut, liver, adrenals, and emotions for mental health. Why is this so important for someone recovering from narcissistic abuse?
So when somebody's been through a lot of abuse in their life, any form of trauma, they're in a fight, flight, or freeze response. Their nervous system is on the edge all the time. And that trauma, that fight, flight, or freeze response doesn't really leave our body unless you do deep counseling and family constellation work and the homeopathy, which releases the stress and trauma. So while this trauma and stress is stored in our body, it burns out our adrenal glands. We go into adrenal fatigue. And because they're responsible for producing adrenaline and cortisol in response to stress. Yeah. And so when our adrenal glands are burnt out, our cortisol levels and adrenaline, all the other hormones go out of balance. And when these hormones go out of balance, then our brain chemicals, our neurotransmitters start dropping. Those are serotonin, dopamine, GABA, melatonin, our feel good and our anti anxiety and our sleep helping neurotransmitters or hormones. They start dropping. So we experience more anxiety, depression, loneliness, OCD, and negative thinking. So that's super important. And then what happens is also when people are really stressed and burnt out, it basically affects our vagus nerve as well. Vagus nerve is this big, beautiful nerve that also innervates our gut, our liver, and different organs in our body. Now, when the vagus nerve is irritated or disrupted, then it affects the functioning of our gut and our liver also. Our gut and liver is also suffering from pesticides, from excessive medicines, from chemicals in the foods, etc. So what happens is when we have too many chemicals, too many antibiotics, and too many drugs and just the wrong foods, the gut lining gets damaged and our probiotics, the good bacteria, get killed off, right? And when this happens, we get holes in our intestines and then toxins leak into our bloodstream. And that causes inflammation everywhere in the body. That's the leading cause for asthma, eczema, arthritis, a lot of chronic conditions. Okay. But it also disrupts our brain chemicals. Also, a lot of our serotonin, GABA, and other neurotransmitters are produced by the bacteria in our gut. So when we kill off the good bacteria and we have an unhealthy microbiome, an unhealthy gut microbiome, then our production of neurotransmitters suffers. So we're experiencing more anxiety, depression, not only from trauma, but from a disruption in our physiology. And then the liver is super important because the liver is like the master controller of hormones, of blood sugar regulation, of cholesterol metabolism, of digestion. And the bile that the liver produces also controls the environment or affects the environment in our gut. And so if the body's inflamed from leaky gut, poor gut health, and from toxins and excessive medicines and the birth control pill and too much alcohol, etc., then the liver stops working so well. And because the liver controls almost every single function in the body, then everything gets disrupted. So we get poor bile flow. With poor bile flow, you're going to get poor digestion, more constipation, more gas, bloating, heartburn, etc. The liver controls hormones. So with liver stagnation or impeded liver function, then we get a hormonal imbalance. So you might see a progesterone deficiency or estrogen excess. And with progesterone deficiency, what happens is GABA, the anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, doesn't work so well in the brain, right? So somebody will have more anxiety and PMS symptoms, let's say breast tenderness, gas, bloating, cramping, clotting, and even maybe fibroids or cysts due to the health of their liver. So they're taking hormonal remedies, but they're not healing their liver, right? And so it's important to heal the gut using probiotics, vitamin D, and other remedies that I cover in the course, as well as healing your liver as well. I often encourage people to eat bitter foods, use herbs like milk thistle or dandelion, right? And other herbs and homeopathic remedies that I also cover to balance the gut, the liver, which are key to mental health. Now you can see why. And then also support adrenal gland function. How is that? By giving adrenal or adaptogenic herbs. I use rhodiola or ashwagandha. I also use homeopathic remedies for burnout and stress. And the key thing to help your adrenal glands is to release trauma because unhealed trauma, childhood trauma, adulthood trauma, and daily life stresses are burning out your adrenal glands. So if you don't heal these stresses and traumas, then you're going to be taking adaptogens or herbs all the time without really treating the root cause, which is the trauma or the family entanglement.
Yeah, very fascinating that connection between the body and the mind, and just seeing that there's such a big part of health issues that can really just be because of your own trauma or mental anything like that. Very fascinating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to heal the mind as well as the gut, the liver, and the adrenal glands together. So these are the pillars of health. I call them the five pillars. One is the gut, the liver, the adrenal system, childhood or emotional trauma, and then systemic entanglements, family trauma.
Mm.
These five pillars are crucial if you want to heal any disease.
Yeah, I can see how those are all so interconnected and really like relate together and create a strong base for that. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing about that. Before we start wrapping up, let's talk a little bit about how people can learn more about you. I know you have a great free gift and special offer, and we have buttons for those below if you'd like to tell us a little bit about what those are.
So there's lots of free videos and masterclasses and an ebook as well on my website. And that covers healing the gut, the liver, adrenal glands. There's a beautiful emotional healing exercise there. There's masterclasses on how I combine family constellations and homeopathy and naturopathic medicine, herbs, etc., to heal anxiety, depression, weight issues, skin issues, parasites, hormone issues, insomnia. It's all there. And then there's a full online course people can get. There's actually two or three full online courses on holistic medicine, family constellations therapy, and I'm about to release a course on homeopathy as well. It's all on the website. And then there's lots of retreats I'm running around the world. Please come to those. Those are super powerful. That's where you get a really in-depth experience of family constellations therapy.
Lovely. Thank you so much for creating and offering those amazing resources. And then, as a reminder to everyone watching or listening, the buttons to Dr. Ameet's free gift and offer are below, and you can click on those to head over to his site. And then, are there any final insights you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Just feeling it out. So, family constellations therapy includes sentences for forgiveness. Yeah. And I'm not saying you have to forgive or accept what happened. Forgiveness often involves healing sentences that are different from the typical healing sentences. Because when you say, I forgive you to a person, it's almost like they're still wrong and you're kind of like more superior. So in constellation work, we say sentences such as, I'm deeply sorry this happened between you and I. Yeah. Or I see what happened between you and I. This wasn't okay for me. And I let it go right now with respect to my own autonomy and your fate with the consequences of what's happened, or your fate can be with you now. Something like that. It's a disentanglement sentence rather than I forgive you and you, I'm above you and you're below me. So those of you struggling with narcissistic abuse or, narcissistic parents, explore forgiveness sentences that are in the course as well.
Mm, Beautiful, beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks, Brielle, and thanks everyone for listening and hope you get the healing that you need.
Lovely. And I also want to thank our Avise students for joining us